Hello, hello, hello. We are live on YouTube with Hangouts on Air. My name is Matty Greenspan. I'm the Senior Market Analyst in eToro. With me today is Mr. Matthew Newton in our UK office.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, so we really have no real agenda for this call. We just wanted to get out there and say hi to everybody on YouTube. You have a little comments box. You should be able to go ahead and give a comment in there. We'll be reading out the chats in live, responding to you. We have a lot of movement in the financial markets today, both in the stock markets and in crypto especially in the crypto markets. So a really exciting time to do a hangout like this.
I think one thing we certainly wanted to go over was the last few months. No one's really talked about it from that point of view, so it'd be good to catch up on that, get your
Uh,
views
Meaning last few months, meaning?
on the cryptocurrency markets.
Yeah. So last few months, it depends how far you want to go back, right?
Yeah,
We had a
certainly
huge
November, October.
surge. Yeah, November, October. I mean, we're still way above levels, from let's say October, even way above where we started November. So between November and now, we had a huge surge and a huge pullback, which is kind of normal for the crypto markets. Um, just go ahead and share a chart here. Let me know on the chat if you could see that chart, if you could see it clearly or something like that. Uh,
How did you feel with this, Matty? You've been through a few of these before. In comparison to previous ones, were you as sanguine throughout, or how did you feel?
the old saying in cryptos, you got to hodl. So that's what I've been doing. Buy the dip and hodl. That seems to be the strategy that works. We have to realize that the cryptocurrency markets are much more volatile than anything we've ever seen before, than any asset class in history. So obviously, the normal risk disclaimer is that past performance does not indicate future results, and that cryptocurrency trading is highly risky. But you can see the incline on the chart here, and Bitcoin. The Bitcoin chart always looks kind of like a hockey stick. If we're looking at let's say right around this region, so the chart actually looked like it pretty much like it does right now, right? So at that time, this was all huge, even though the numbers were different. This was like $1,000, and everybody was going, "Wow, it breached $1,000," for the first time since 2013. So everybody was all excited. So what you can do here on the chart, there's something called a log scale, which makes it a bit easier to understand what the percentage movements look like. And as you can see, we've seen these type of massive pullbacks before. Sometimes there's some consolidation after a pullback, but if the past is any indication, it just means that when there is a dip, that represents a nice buying opportunity. Oh, hey Liam, how's it going? Hey Jasper.
I,
Hi, Joeed.
I always look back. Sorry.
Cool.
I'm interrupting your things, but I was just thinking that
No worries.
looking back at September, it was for a lot of people who came in November and December who were new to these markets. You look back and the FUD around the Chinese debacle, we'll put it, and compare. You look at that on the chart now, it looks like nothing, but I remember that was a pretty intense period as well. But you know, when you pull back from the chart, right, over the last few years, it just looks like nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And if we do continue on to, I've seen people are predicting 50K or 100K. Some
Mm,
people obviously go ridiculous and say a million. I don't know. Maybe it will get there, but obviously, if we do get to 50K, this pullback is going to look a lot like these other pullbacks that we've seen before. So,
yeah.
um, just what we've seen in the last 24 hours has been incredibly encouraging. So we zoom in, right? We got the 1 hour chart here, and take a look at that. A nice clean breakout above 9,000. Uh,
Yeah.
that's great to see. And not only that, I think that you pointed out to me about about an hour ago. Ah, Litecoin.
Yeah. It's not stopping for anyone. And it is, if you look at it on the chart, if you draw the trend lines down, it is the perfect breakout. It's right on the line. And when you want to see a breakout, you want to see something that isn't going to look back. It's not stop for breath. It's cleared 200. That looks like a really solid breakout.
Yeah,
If we can
nice
get
clean breakout. Yeah, look at that. Like you see, here's the first point on the trend line. Second point, third point makes it a trend line, and you can see that it spent a good 48 hours hugging that trend line before that clean breakout. And now we're up above that, even above that first point in the downtrend. So this is just an excellent bullish sign. And by the watch, let's pull up my crypto watch list here. Look at that, 33%
mm,
rise on today. That's just massive, and it's incredible to see after such a long period of consolidation. Breakout on ETH as well. Yeah, Jasper, that's right. ETH, all the cryptos are moving today. I,
a Valentine's Day bounce, as he called it.
Valentine's Day present. Happy Valentine's Day. Yeah. So ETH, I would say, just has a little bit to go before a nice breakout because it did
Yeah.
have previous that previous high of 900. That was on February 10th, so a few days ago. I think that for an ETH breakout, we need to see nice clean movement above 915, 920 area before we call that a real breakout. Thoughts on XRP? Yeah, I got a few thoughts on XRP.
Always the
Um,
XRP thoughts.
but one thing that's even cooler than that is Stellar Lumens, which we've added to the platform just yesterday. And you can see that under the ticker XLM. And look at that. Look at that clean chart right there, huh? That's very well. It's only showing data at the moment since we opened it up. So so far, no past data into here. However, you can see since we added it, um, huge upswing, huge upward movement in the price, which is great to see. And I wanted to take actually wanted to take this moment to add it to my crypto watch list. So I'll just go ahead and put that onto crypto. And then when I go to my watch list, I'll be able to see that there.
Yeah, Stellar's a nice one. I like that project. There was some nice. There was a nice little bit of analysis that we put out. Actually, the little PDF that the marketing team put together. It was,
I hadn't seen it yet. Well, maybe I
good.
just don't know which one you're talking about. But yeah, go ahead and post a link in the chat there, Matthew, so people can see.
It's
Jasper, eToro involved in the pump. Well, I wouldn't say that necessarily, no. However, there might be more truth to what you're saying than you might have intended, because we do have more than 8 million registered users on eToro, and the demand for cryptos among our clients is significant. So adding a market like XLM does indeed increase the liquidity of this market and increases people on the buy side. So
Well, as we could see, we had to turn it off at that point because there was an incredible demand for it, as there has been with other. I think the same happened with Litecoin. So yeah,
yeah, yeah. Look,
eToro people, you know, the numbers are there to make an impact, I guess now.
yeah, well, definitely we have the numbers. We are one of the biggest players in this market as far as the cryptocurrencies.
Mm.
Um, but I wouldn't, I wouldn't speculate on if adding it would, had an impact on the price. All I'm going to say is it's up 21% today.
As are some of the other cryptos.
Exactly. We didn't add Litecoin yesterday, and it's up,
No.
30+%. So yeah.
Have you seen anything that might have contributed to that? I certainly haven't. I certainly haven't come across anything myself. It seems to be
You mean why Litecoin
while.
specifically?
Yeah, I don't know whether it's the news behind the light pay or not, but that
Light.
came out last week, wasn't it?
I wasn't familiar with light pay. What's that?
I think it's light pay. Me check.
Um,
Uh, maybe one of
s-
the maybe one of the one of our popular investors on the feed can check. But yeah, there was a light pay. I guess it's a wallet or it's a payment system. I just know about it. The news came out last week on it. I'll post a link now.
okay. Um, I think, generally speaking, and it might be funny, speaking as an analyst and saying something like this, but I don't think that there's always necessarily an extremely solid correlation between always the news events
Mm,
and, the movements in the market. I think that, if you think about cryptocurrencies, you got to pay attention to the overall story here, which is the revolution that blockchain technology is bringing to the
mm,
world. And among that, there's going to be winners and losers in the cryptocurrency world. So some of these cryptocurrencies may, in fact, go to zero, like Goldman Sachs has said, and even the CEO of Ripple said it, I think,
mm.
yesterday. Um, but for those who believe in the technology, there certainly will be some winners here. And just like we saw in the tech bubble of 2000, people were buying tech stocks like there was no tomorrow. Those who bought Yahoo, um, not doing so well, but those who bought
Mm,
Amazon, they're flying at the
yeah,
moment. So best thing to
and
do is to diversify your portfolio, and maybe you catch a few losers and maybe you catch a few winners.
yeah, those who bought pets.com got wrecked.
Yeah, exactly,
That's
exactly.
it. I think that's why it's healthy. I know certainly. I don't know if you'd share my perspective. I think that the with the amount of people that come in, my views are people will hodl less and start taking more profits in the next bull runs should they come. I know certainly with altcoins, a lot of the altcoins, I'll definitely change up my strategy rather than hold the altcoins. I think, and this is my own personal view, whether it's correct or not is up for debate. But I'll certainly be looking to take some fiat profits and some Bitcoin profits with each altcoin bull run just from my own
Really?
time in there. Yeah, I think so. Because at the end of the day, you're right. A lot of these altcoins are startups. Startups ultimately have a poor record of survival. So I don't see why these should be any different. Obviously, if you find a project that you really do believe in, maybe it's worth holding if you truly believe it. I'm just saying that's my view. If there's a doubt maybe over something, or you don't think the community or the developers are that strong, then that's a tactic I'm going to employ anyway. That's for sure.
Yeah, so I think you're right. I think, well, there's a lot of ICOs, and the ICO market has been called a bubble, and you're absolutely right. ICOs by nature they are startups, and as we know, startups don't always do well. They can fail for any number of reasons.
Mm,
I think that the last statistic I saw was something like 90% or more of
mm,
startups end up failing, but they fail for different reasons, and one of those
yeah,
reasons is lack of funding.
true.
Um, and I think that in this case, that's kind of
Good
taken
point.
away, right? So
Yeah.
if the rest of the factors line up, if there's market demand, if they have a proper team, if they're able to get the project off the ground, that's then that they could some of them be a good investment opportunity. However, I think that by now everybody is aware of the risk, and what I
Mm,
see a lot of the time happening is people go, hey, Matty, what do you think about this ICO or this new token? And then I take a look at it and go, what does it do?
mm.
Oftentimes I get a response like a blank stare. I have no idea,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
uh, and the thing is that people have thanks in large part to central banks quantitative easing. There's large amounts of cash on the side that are looking for high risk investments. So, people going, okay, I'll just put $100 or $500. What do I care? But if it goes to the moon, great. If I
Mm,
lose it, whatever. And then they're just willing to take that that kind of risk, and I think that's a lot of what we see in the ICO market and why. However, for myself, I'm with you. I only hold a very sliver of my overall portfolio in altcoins
Yeah.
or stuff like that. And the rest, I'd prefer to look at these more well-established cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin,
Mm.
Ethereum, Litecoin,
Yeah.
XRP, and XLM. I mean, there's no reason to let their rivalry get in the way. Let me hold both of them in my portfolio.
Yeah.
But overall, cryptocurrencies are not taking all that much of what I'm doing. So right now, you can see, according to my exposure, 9.8% on cryptos overall, and that's really, as an investor, what I feel comfortable holding. So the rest would be, in stocks and currencies, ETFs, and commodities, um, according to taste, obviously.
Mm. Build up the Bitcoin moon bag.
The
Uh, what?
what?
Bitcoin moon bag. um, Jasper has put up. You bring up Ether, so Jasper's brought up EOS, Ether, Cardano, KMD. I've never really gone in to look at that one, but yeah. Any thoughts on what's going to be the ICO platform? I guess long term. Any views?
Um, I think that the most well established at the moment and the most used is Ethereum. I
Mm,
mean, by far, Ethereum has the most usage, the most ICOs, the most smart contracts, the most developers,
mm,
the biggest community. Yeah, the most DApps. So yeah, that's the one that's most established. So before I go and invest in another coin that's um, I don't know, more or less established, I'd want to see some more projects happening on that network as far as I'm concerned.
yeah. Some people believe this summer could be the summer of the EOS ICO boom.
Yeah, we're gonna add a lot more cryptocurrencies on eToro. Like I said yesterday, we added Stellar Lumens, but we got a lot more coming. So hang tight. We're gonna add more and more. The number one thing that we look for when adding new cryptocurrencies, we want to see. Similar to what I look for when I'm looking to invest in a crypto, we want to see volumes. We want to see that this is an established token, because we have a large demand from our users for cryptocurrencies. And as you said, even Stellar Lumens, for all that we prepared, yesterday we were not able to facilitate buy orders for about 10 minutes. So we actually had a downtime on Stellar, just because the demand was too high and were not able to get those tokens to place in our customers' accounts. So whenever we add a new one, we always want to make sure, first of all, that there's good liquidity, sufficient liquidity in the market to add it for you.
One other thing I'd like to add on the ICO platforms, you know, there's some really good videos on YouTube, particularly around EOS and Ether. And a good question is you look at, say, Neo and Ether, where you have the gas and you have to pay for transactions. And then you have EOS where there'll be no transaction fees. And that's the whole point. Dan Larmer certainly suggests that people will choose to not pay transaction fees over, paying transaction fees. So little things like that could be an interesting to see how that plays out over the future. Also, Cardano, I know Cardano, the people behind it, the the main individual whose name slips my mind, but he says that Ether is their perfect use case. So as he was, formerly involved in the Ether project, they use Ether as the use case to fix all the problems going forward. So they can look at Ether, see what doesn't work, and then build, a platform that does work from the ground up. And I know that was Dan Larmer's philosophy as well. Builds up a platform that was um, for scaling, I guess, from the ground up. So these are the little things that are going to play out, I guess, to see which platform does become the dominant platform over the long term. So interesting, but again, that's
Yeah,
why you don't want to put all your faith maybe in one of them and have a nice spread across each of them. See what
yeah.
happens.
Look, there might be more than one winner here too,
Mm,
right? It's not necessarily that one
yeah.
of them will take the entire market share, but
Hmm.
They could end up splitting. Or splitting it, and then you could get some third network that just relies heavily on both of them, right?
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
people use that.
yeah.
You never really know what's going to happen in the future, but when you're investing, that's why you got to spread out your risk as much as you can.
Mm.
Liam Davies asking Matty, are you in any way preparing for a stock market crash? Liam, I've been preparing for a stock market crash since 2012.
A lot of people have.
I gave up trying to short it when the momentum is against, um, years ago. But look, we have seen significant signs lately that things might be turning around. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Dow Jones. So we actually had some really interesting data over the last hour. The United States sent out their monthly inflation report, and you can just see the action that it's had on the Dow Jones. The reaction of the Dow Jones immediately sold off. So I don't want to get too technical, economical on you. Those who are reading my daily updates will know very well the significance that this can have on the market. But I do want to just take a look. And so the inflation data, by the way, came out way bigger than expected. So the U.S. has been expecting, they've been wondering why inflation hasn't kicked in. And at the moment, it's just hitting them by storm. Um, yeah, Jesper, the bond market as well. We've had a total sell off in the bonds. Just so this peak was actually January 30th. Since then, we had some consolidation. But then, just since the beginning of February, we've had a total meltdown in the stock market. The bonds are going nuts. The yield is going through the roof. And a lot of people are saying that this might be because the Fed is kind of starting to unwind. And we can see that since 2009, the stock markets have been going up wildly, and this is thanks, in large part to Federal Reserve money printing policy, where they print out money, and then a lot of that gets used in the stock market. Um, Now that they're turning around, maybe going the other way, and everybody's saying, the economy is doing great, we're adding jobs at a record pace, then people start getting scared that some of that money is going to be coming off the table, that the Fed isn't going to be providing as much support as they have been in the past. And that's why we've been seeing, over the last 2 weeks, this kind of sell-off. So the inflation data that came out today, well, we're gonna get the U.S. market opening. So actually,
Mm.
um, I've actually had the bond yields on my screen over the last week, because this is where it really started, and you can see it um, just over the last 2 weeks. You can see these yields starting to spike. Right there it is, and they've been up pretty high. Historically, though, they're not all that high. Right now, the 10-year bond yield is at 2.87%. But if you look at it like 1982, right, they had 15%, meaning anybody who lent money to the U.S. government in 1982 was getting 15% a year on their money. Right now, it's really low, actually, 2.8%. However, because of the gyration of this movement, it's getting people pretty freaked out at the moment.
Yeah, the interest rates as well. I posted something there the other day. I got a little bit of stick on it
Mhm.
on the
Mhm.
platform for supporting someone who was flip flopping. But I guess once you have new data, you have to change your mind with the data. But I still think Ray Dalio is someone who's good at following for things like this, because he talks about the long term and the short term debt cycle, and he's of the view that we're approaching the end of the long term debt cycle, which would have began after the Great Depression. So there is a period now for central bankers to try and move delicately to the next one, but now he's of the opinion that it's going to be a difficult one. So certainly it's a time where you need to keep the antennae up But the reason why I got a bit of stick was because a week before he said it was almost stupid to hold cash at Davos. So and then the markets went for a 10% correction. So he changed his mind and put out a link on on LinkedIn. But I still think he's someone to pay attention to. He was the CEO of Bridgewater, which is the largest hedge fund in the world. So certainly he must have been doing something right.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, you're right. I mean, I've been watching Ray Dalio for a while as well, and I thought it was quite curious the way he said is saying to hold to not to hold cash, and then changing his mind like that. And he's also somebody who he actually kicked Bitcoin when it was down. He
Yeah.
was saying he was out fudding Bitcoin. Just if I remember correctly, his comments came just after the peak and when the markets were just in the beginning of that massive sell-off.
Mm.
So maybe he flip flopped on the bond market. Maybe he'll flip flop on Bitcoin as well.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Well, he portrays himself as open-minded and willing to take on new things. So, yeah, hopefully, you might do a bit more research on it. It's hard to not change your mind on cryptocurrencies if you just look at it from the point of view of seeing it on a chart without any information. How can you not dive into crypto, see some of these communities and the people working to try and really bring something new to the table, really change the world, I guess is the the exaggerated version of that. But there's such solid communities and such solid work going on that if you see that, it's hard to stay in your this is a bubble, this is a scam mentality.
Yeah,
Would you agree?
yeah. I absolutely would. I have met so many people in person and online, so many talented people who are working right now to build what a lot of people are referring to as the next layer of the internet.
Mm,
um and it's for somebody who's maybe in an ivory tower or something, they don't necessarily see those projects. They obviously people don't feel free to approach them on LinkedIn
yeah.
and say, hey, I got this cool blockchain project, come take a look. But they come to me constantly. And a lot of these projects are so incredibly interesting and have so much potential that it's certainly impossible to ignore it from my side.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, someone who I've really come to like in the crypto world is Ari Paul. I tweeted out the other day that he was one of my favorite voices, and I was listening to a podcast from the other day, and even someone as smart as him, he's saying, I'm not as technical as I can get. I'm not a developer. I need to rely on the developers and expert developers' opinion on code and things like that. And that's the truth. You do need people who can go in there, look at the code, and really see what's going on behind a lot of these cryptocurrencies. And if someone like Ray Dalio or any of these guys, unless they really get someone to go in and look at it in a technical level and report back, well then, yeah, it's going to be easy to just throw it under the bus.
Yeah, seems like we got some kind of sound issues. You're actually sounding a bit like a robot. Let's hope that hope
Yeah.
that hope that clears.
Unless he's just,
That
he's just slagging me for my voice.
well, it's not because you're British, I don't think.
Which I'm not.
No. Oh, right. Damn. Not because you're Irish. Oh my God, I can't believe I made that one. Seems like it's cleared up now. We'll power
Could
through
be
and
my
like
headset. Could be my
yeah,
headset.
we'll hope that YouTube fixes
Yeah.
that one for us. Yeah. So several people asking about the cryptocurrency wallet. In fact, even before we got online, I saw that somebody
It's the number
named
one question.
Elaine Gray asking on the chat here. He wants to know more specifics about the wallet. And look, Elaine, we really put out we were quite clear when we put out a teaser about the eToro wallet. We don't have any specifics. What I can tell you is we have an excellent team that's working not only on a wallet, but on a lot of really awesome projects for you. Unfortunately, I really won't be able to give you very much details about that. And just be prepared, you might not get any further details about this for quite a while. This is not something that we're, building, as an open source project, for all to see. This is something that we're building in house. Um, we put out this teaser so that we can get your feedback and thoughts about it. Um, and we are certainly building some amazing products on the back end. Number one thing that we want to keep in mind, sort of two critical things when we're thinking about these type of next level products in eToro. So number one is regulation. We need to make sure that we are on board and on the same page as our financial regulators, as a regulated financial firm. This is of utmost importance to us. And number two is security. For we've seen there's been so many incidents, let's call them, in the crypto world, and we need to be 100% that any product that we put out is tested and retested and completely airtight before putting it out. So publishing plans about how and what we're doing are not conducive to either of those two critical points. That said, I have had extensive discussions with the team who's working on them, and what they're working on is amazing. So sorry to keep you hanging like that. I know it's not exactly what you want to hear, but this is what we have, and just sit tight. We may not have any updates for several months. So we'll have them. We'll get them when we get them, as they say. Um,
Regulation is obviously, we have a duty of care to make sure that everything is solid as well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. This is regulation and security. Those are the two main things, and it obviously it takes time to build things. We don't snap our fingers and have it ready overnight. But so I'm not gonna point the finger at either of those two items. They do take time, but what my point is here, that we're not in a rush to release anything. We do need to make sure that when we do release something, that it is 100. So you see that in eToro we do a lot of the time, and case in point, you can see my screen now. These are the pro charts that we have, right? And I'm showing the VXX. The market actually is just opening right now, so I think we should get on to that.
Yeah.
VXX is actually down. That's interesting. Down at the open. Very curious. I was expecting volatility to spike at the open of the market. Um, Understood. Needs to be solid. Yeah, that's about where we are with that, and um, you know, you're welcome to continue asking us as much as you like. Um, but
Yeah.
the answer is we won't really have any real updates for quite some time. So as long as we understand that, then it's all in a good atmosphere. Uh, so here's the Dow Jones opening. So we
Ooh.
saw that massive spike down when we got the inflation print. That was a spike down from 2,800 all the way down to, sorry, yeah, 24,800 points, 24,300. There's a 500-point spike down. So obviously some trying to buy the dip on that. We'll see. We'll see where we get to from here, really. What did I want to take a look at is the bond yields. So actually volatility is dropping. That's a curious one. CNBC seems to be stuck over here. Too many people looking at the 10-year bond yield at the moment, I guess. Um, yeah, interesting that the markets are having a bit of an adverse reaction to that data. Let's see what the bond yield. Well, we can see the TLT on eToro. So if you want to trade on bonds on eToro, you can see the TLT, which did have a sell-off here also on that inflation print.
I guess they're going to be fearful. Probably towards the higher inflation. They'll have to tighten rates a little bit, and that could be why the markets are down. What do you think?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the narrative that's been happening I'm just curious about the volatility because you can see
Mm.
the VIX is
Yeah.
actually down, and I would expect that after such a huge inflation reading that here. So here you can see the inflation. So analysts were expecting 0.3%, and in the end they came out 0.5% on the CPI. And the core CPI, is one of the things that the Fed looks at a little more closely because it's a bit less volatile. They discount things like food and other volatile pricing metrics. And that analysts were expecting an increase of 0.2%. It came out 0.3%. So inflation reading is much higher than expected now. And let's just take a look at the bond yields, the 10-year bond yields, because this entire market sell-off actually started with the bonds. Um, so that's why I've been super focused. And here it is. The yield is spiking. The yield is spiking. 2.87 on the open, where it closed yesterday at around 2.83. This is actually a pretty big movement for the bond market.
Mm. Time will tell. It hasn't quite rebounded as maybe some would have liked anyway, that's for sure. It's still a little bit of fear in the markets there.
Yeah. So I mean, even the Fed, end of January was looking at the market and going, these prices don't make any sense. They're,
Yeah.
things are way overpriced at the moment. So to see them come down, that's something that a lot of people were expecting.
Mm.
Um, the question is that 23,000 was that the bottom, or do we have further to go down?
Yeah.
And only time will tell. But in my view, I mean, you can see what I'm doing in my account. So here's DJ30 in my account. I'm selling the Dow Jones. I've
Mm.
got a sell order on the Japanese, the Nikkei 225.
Oh, nice.
I've been intermittently selling the JER 30 over the last few weeks, and buying the dollar because if inflation is going up, very likely the Federal Reserve is going to start
Tighten
hiking
rates. Yeah.
rates. Yeah, they're going to tighten their belt a little bit, which that type of effect usually that those type of actions usually have a positive effect on the USD. So that's why I'm buying the US dollar against Japanese yen. I've had this sell position on the euro dollar since January 30th. I'm going to
Nice.
hold on to that one for a while. So you take a look at
Yeah.
the euro dollar here. And oh, by the way, 2 weeks from now is Italian elections. Nobody's talking about that, but that's a huge risk at the moment.
Yeah. What's going on there?
So at the moment, we're looking at a kind of a runoff between Silvio Berlusconi and the Five Star Movement,
Mm.
which is Five Star Movement is the anti-establishment. So the fact that they're having a runoff between Silvio Berlusconi, who I don't know, and if you remember him from any headlines, it's usually in the context of sex scandal or
I can't believe
um,
he's back, but
yeah,
I can
Berlusconi.
believe it as well. He
Nobody
doesn't go away.
can. Nobody can. Right? It's just keep flushing. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
No, he doesn't go away, and now he's on the television with you know um, commercials about he's aiming himself he's positioning to try and attract pet owners and saying people who adopt pets are going to have reduced taxes on dog food and stuff like that, like really just you know
Unbelievable.
out of the blue. But the
Yeah,
fact that the and you know what, he doesn't scare me as much as some of the other candidates there who are really anti-establishment, and we might even try to go for something like a Brexit, or like leaving Italy,
yeah.
Italy leaving
Like
the
the
European
EU.
Union.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There
and
is, there is. I mean, it's not something to be dismissed. It's there's an element of that in Italy. That way they haven't exactly grown since they've joined the EU. So there's a few upset individuals, that's for sure.
yeah, but so you got to look at the map when this is concerned. I mean, the UK leaving Europe, geographically. they were half in, half out, from the beginning. I think
Mm,
maybe you'd have further insight than myself, being not a Brit, not British, but at least
yeah,
being
been
there,
here. Yeah.
living in London for a while. Um, but if Italy leaves the EU, I mean, just
Mm, yeah,
just
it's
take a
big.
look. Yeah, it's just take a look at the map. It's like it would be so weird. And I think that it would probably have a devastating impact on the European Union. And by the charts, the euro has been rallying over the course of 2017. That's thanks in large part due to a successful victory from Emmanuel Macron in France. Who beat out Marine Le Pen, who Marine Le Pen was saying was going to go for the French
Mm,
exit from the EU, and that's not happening. But you can see this gap over here was in April, right,
mm,
when all of a sudden Macron won those elections,
yeah,
and just a huge rally after that.
yeah.
Um,
Then
Germany's
Draghi probably helping the rest of it.
Well, yeah. Well, Draghi actually, he's not. It doesn't seem very comfortable with the euro being this high, which is the other
Yeah.
reason. The other reason that I've been short on the euro, because the European Central Bank uh, would prefer that the euros remain a little bit lower
Yeah, sure.
where it is now, because this does start to have an effect on European exports at some point. So I think even a retracement back to 1.2, or 1.18 would be a normal movement for this currency, even if the overall direction is upward, on the short term. But that obviously, usual disclaimers apply, right? This is just my view, and obviously we do those type of things with a small portion of our balance and
Mm,
small risk, and keep ourselves diversified.
yeah, yeah. But the markets, it was always gonna be difficult for any central banker, including Draghi, to say that, well, we're going to look to, to cut, um, the QE and not expect the markets to react. So it's always a difficult balancing act for them.
Yeah, indeed. Look, they've been in heavy support of this market for quite a while now, and they have been dialing it back, right?
Mm,
They were printing 80 billion, I believe, a year ago, and now they've reduced that gradually to 60 and now 30.
mm,
So they've been reducing the amount of QE that they're doing. I mean, obviously, it's a lot more than the United States, who's completely been out of the QE game since 2013,
yeah.
2014. Um, but that's the underlying story, I think, of the market at the moment, is they're them just pulling back the stimulus. And one of the things that I've been most watching recently is the correlation between cryptocurrencies and the stocks, because I think that over the course of 2017, what we saw in the cryptocurrency market is in fact largely related to what's happening in the stock market, where we have massive amounts of new money entering the system thanks to the central banks. They've printed, just the central banks alone have raised their balance sheets by almost $20 trillion, which the central banks, if you think about the overall banking system, right, the central banks then lend money to the internal banks, and the internal banks take that money, and then they lend it out multiple times. So meaning that if they've created 19.5 trillion dollars on their own balance sheets, in effect, the internal banks may then use that money to create approximately $250 billion,
Yeah.
or thereabouts. I mean, different estimates, because nobody can really figure out how much money is floating around in the system. A lot of that ends up in the stock markets, which is why we've seen that massive run up
Mm,
over the last decade. Since 2009, the stock markets have been going through the roof. And what happens in this type of environment is investors continuously look for riskier and riskier assets to invest in, and they start discounting risk, which is why specifically the stock markets, which are considered such a risky asset, have gone up so much over the last year and a half. Um, and cryptocurrencies, you don't get any more, you don't get higher risk than that. That's like extreme risk right there. Um,
Mm,
so I put out a chart in today's daily update, which was showing that over the last month we've actually seen a very tight correlation between Bitcoin and the Dow Jones,
mm,
as some of it's coming off the table. The only difference here is that Bitcoin's already seen a 70% retracement since its peak,
yeah.
whereas the Dow Jones's retracement has been only about 12 or 13%.
Mm.
So just taking a look at the inflation report, which came out at 3:30 local time.
You were looking for a
Uh,
correlation, weren't you?
yes, I was, and I don't think that I necessarily got it.
This is live.
Um, yeah, yeah, we're definitely live. We got.
I have Iqbal standing beside me.
Oh, hey, Iqbal. Iqbal's our managing director in the UK. Excellent, excellent guy. Wonderful leader. Um, so just taking a look, I think that the surge in the cryptocurrency markets actually came out a bit before that inflation data. So let me see if I can just interlay it. Sometimes when we interlay on the eToro charts, it doesn't come out right because the Dow Jones is considerably more flat. So the surge in cryptocurrencies, take a look, came out about an hour before the market sell off. Um, Maybe some correlation, but I think that the cryptocurrencies didn't. What I was looking for was a reaction in the crypto market to the inflation data, and that certainly didn't happen. Um, if if it did, it manifested itself in the way of stopping the momentum, which you can see there was momentum in Bitcoin, and then at when that came out is 3:30 on this chart. Um, that started to reverse itself a little bit. So, but not not certainly not selling off like the Dow Jones did over here.
Mm. A big thing for crypto, if we want to see the institutional money really come into Bitcoin in the future, a non-correlation with markets and whatnot is going to be really a big motivating factor for them to start trading it as an asset class for them.
How do you mean?
As in, if it's a non-correlated asset to gold or to the markets, then it's going to be favorable to asset managers, to institutions, because then they can see it as a genuine portfolio inclusion, shall we say. So it would be nice to see a bit more, you know, I guess moving by itself inversely to the markets, or inversely to other ones. But if it ends up correlating with the Dow Jones and the markets, well, then less motivating for them to get involved.
Interesting. Um, so yeah, I was looking for a bit more correlation because the way I see it, the more correlation we have, it would show
Mm.
institutional interest.
Yeah.
However, you might have a good point there where you're saying that actually less correlation is better because that makes it
Yeah.
more attractive to add in your portfolio. This is actually what I've been doing lately, is using
Yeah.
it as an inclusion in my portfolio. Like I showed before, about 10% of my overall investment is in crypto,
Mm.
and that that can that can um, contribute even to most of the gains in my portfolio over the last year, um, just because of the way the erratic way that these things move.
Mm.
So taking a risk, risking only 10% of your portfolio, and then having the opportunity to from that see massive gains, and have that in addition uncorrelated to what's happening in the stock markets. This is just plus 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 plus.
Yeah. I think, well, that's just my own view as well. I mean, it doesn't mean that uh, what you'd necessarily be wrong, but I just think, if like gold is such a favorable part of people's portfolios because it's a hedge against other aspects, so you can make it as a solid diversified play within the portfolio. So I think that's what Bitcoin ultimately would want to be. So if to attract that big money,
Yeah.
pension
It
funds and whatnot.
yeah. Issa Kendall asking, have you guys spoken about gold? Sorry, arrived late. Yeah, no worries. Issa,
Oil or gold?
he's asking about oil. Did I say
Yeah,
gold?
I think. Well, I heard gold.
Yeah, we're talking about gold, so let's take a look at gold
Let's
and
go.
oil. I think
Yeah.
while we're on here, oil by popular demand.
Mm,
Um, so inflation data came out, and oil did react to that. A bit of a sell-off. Actually, it broke out to a new low. So let's just zoom out on the chart here. Okay, so maybe not a new low if we look at February 9th as the low at 58, the 58 handle, just touching the 57 handle briefly on November 8th. Um, so the thing about oil is it's been rising pretty steadily. So we can say the sell off from $106 a barrel in 2014, in the famous sell off, um, caused a lot of strife actually in the oil producing countries, Canada, Russia, Venezuela, to name a few. Um, so actually, we can see that oil has been rising fairly steadily since beginning of 2017. So
mm.
take a look at all of this huge leg upward.
Yep.
Um, the thing
I went
about
long the USO in May, quite a bit.
Yeah, oh
Mm.
wow, that must look pretty.
Yeah, unleveraged, but it's good.
Yeah, cool. I've been trying to short oil, just because. So there's two factors in my mind about oil. Is that so first of all, there is a huge oversupply in the market, but what's more concerning as far as the price is concerned is that um, the technology for drilling oil has improved vastly. So at this point, there's pumps in the United States that are just ready to be, turned on, and they're basically ready and waiting. So a- at some point, you have to count the overall supply of oil, not as the amount that's already been drilled, but also the amount that is ready to be drilled at a moment's notice, which includes a lot more. And then the second thing, also a technological update, is that we've been relying less heavily on oil. Um,
Mm.
we've seen, just recently, I put out I showed a report that was saying that clean energy is actually now cheaper to produce
Interesting.
than other sources. Um, so hopefully, and oil and coal and everything like that, they're not the best sources of energy as far as the Mother Earth is concerned. Um, so those two factors should have a downward pressure on the oil. However, as short-term movements generally tend to do, they follow things like what OPEC is saying, and they listen to that quite closely, um, which in my mind is a bit of a mistake as far as the markets are concerned. But time will tell.
Yeah, commodities have certainly rebounded in the last while, and often in the past, commodities have tended to move inversely to the stock market. So one market is in a pure bull market, and the other one isn't. Maybe we're starting to see the early signs of the equity market coming to an end and the commodity market improving. It was certainly something a view I had last year, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, I had gold in my portfolio. I actually took it out, and especially with the stock market selling off, we have
Mm.
seen some rush towards the safe havens like gold. The only thing that worries me about having gold in my portfolio is this
Inflation.
chart right here.
Well,
Actually,
not
not even
inflation. Sorry,
not
it'd
even
be a hedge, wouldn't it?
inflation.
Yeah.
So just on the technical side, right? So
Uh,
we have this, right, and then we have let's say something like that. It's an upward channel, right?
yeah.
but there's so much risk on the downside.
Yeah.
Right now we're at 1335. The bottom of the channel doesn't come in until at least 1260.
Mm.
So I would rather be a buyer in these regions. Buying now, where do you set your stop loss at?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You have to set it all the way down here, and that's just like difficult to do. As a trader, I really can't compel myself to do that.
Mm. And plus, if you look at that even more, it didn't, while it did break the previous high, it didn't necessarily have the legs to keep going. So, um, nearly a double top from that point of view. It could certainly revert back towards that range, the bottom of that range over the next few months.
We got Liam Davies on the chat, shilling out his oil positions. Just taking a look real quick. Selling 2.45% of your overall portfolio, 5% gains. Excellent. Good on you, Liam. Yeah, I'm copying you, Liam. Um, my
People love
portfolio.
to short oil.
I've been copying you for a while. Yeah. You. Thanks for 181% return, Liam. You are the man.
Liam bossing it.
Yeah. So sweet. Yeah, next time we'll have to have you on, man. So let us know, obviously, in the comments what you
That'd
think
be a good
about
idea.
this. Yeah, I would like to do more of these hangouts, but
Mm,
I want to see demand. So you guys leave us comments, tell us that you want more, and I will get more analysts from our side inside of eToro, more popular investors. As long as you've seen with us adding cryptos, we go with what our users want. So if you're if this is what you guys want to see, let us know, and we'll be happy to do more of them.
definitely. Always fun.
Thanks a lot, Matthew, and thanks everybody for joining us today.
Cheers, guys. Hopefully, see you again soon.
Bye for now.